Good morning. It is Make It Happen Monday. It's 9 a.m. and I'm Cheryl Andrews. Those who don't know me, I'm known as the Listening Detective, and this is the show where we talk about stories, strategies, and ask questions to help you achieve success without stress. So gorgeous welcome. Today we're talking about social media and the stress of social media, and it's the first in a series of episodes and discussions and interviews where I'm going to be talking to people who are sharing what they're making happen, but also we're talking about the theme of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. What works, what doesn't work, and when should we listen to ourselves and hit the pause button and stop the pushing. So without any further ado, today, we're going to talk today about social media. Those who know me well and have followed me regularly, you will know that just in April, I didn't do any videos. I haven't done any Makeup Mondays for 4 weeks. And I also did very little to no posting on LinkedIn. In fact, I did post 2 or 3 times. I think I shared something and wrote some comments on things. But the big thing I took a break from, I hit the pause button on, was crafting social media posts every single day. Good morning, whoever's joining me. Please do say hello, like. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button. Let me know, because one of the things I do know that helps push me to create time, pushes me to get out of my comfort zone and do the social media stuff, is knowing that somebody is listening. So it's always lovely when someone joins me live. But if you subscribe to the channel, if you hit the little bell on LinkedIn, or you hit the like button on Facebook, all of those things give me feedback that what I'm doing is of interest and it works for you. Of course, if it's not working for you, you can also give me feedback, send me a private message or even comment on the videos and let me know what would work better. So why did I take a month off from social media? Well, those who've known me and worked over, you'll know some of my patterns are that I generally work 9 months of the year. So I work with my clients. Good morning. Now I'm going to have to try it. Shaka. No, I don't know how to say your name, and I'd really like to. Shakran, maybe. Let me know if I've got anywhere near that. I know that getting names right is important, so I would love to learn how to say your name correctly. If I don't get it right, then maybe we'll arrange a call and you can teach me how to say it properly. But thank you for being here and listening to me today. So we're talking today about social media, and I know that for many of the people I talk to, it can become very stressful and they can be pushing themselves to say something. And I was feeling a little bit like that. However, the break was actually planned. I generally work with my clients January, February, March. I then take, I have what I call light month in April. I have 2 weeks where I'm not really with any customer facing work. And I'm usually tidying up stuff in the business, working behind the scenes, working on it rather than in it. And then I take my 2 weeks holiday. I then work May, June, July, and I do the same kind of thing in August. Although in August, generally, I come offline completely. So I have people who are checking my social media. I have people who are checking my emails, and they have my personal private telephone number and they can get hold of me if they want to. But my phone is off and I completely disconnect from the outside world and spend time with my family. And then I come back September, October, and November, and I do something very similar in December. However, I found myself quite stressed at the end of March, debating whether to take the time off, even though I've done it for the last 15 years of running my business. And I think I've been on Facebook about 11 or 12 years. And so I want to share that with you. It's my phonetic learning, but thank you very much for doing that. We will arrange some time to catch up, and I'd love to know more about you and your business as well. So I want to find out from you, if you are watching, particularly yourself, if you're online with me, could you share with me social media for you is like what? And what I've discovered is, and I always talk to people about the 7 principles of motivated action, is we have to always remember the purpose. Why are we doing it? Why are we on there? And I realised by taking the break over the April period, one of the things that I remembered, if you like, is that the reason why I'm on it has changed. Now, when I very first started social media, the first platform I was on was Facebook. Then I did LinkedIn, and I played with Twitter, and then I did YouTube. And I wouldn't say that I'm particularly brilliant at any of them, but I do consistently show up because experts say you need to be showing up consistently, and because people forget very easily who you are and if you want business. So my number one reason why I joined social media in the very first place was for business. So my purpose for communicating is to raise awareness, to educate people, to build connection, to have conversations with people. Because right now, I know there's 10,000 people at home crying in private with overwhelm and frustration, trying to get themselves heard and understood. And they have tried everything they can. They feel like they're going around in circles, and they don't know that even that coaching exists. They don't know that clean language is a way of listening to and learning to trust yourself again. They don't know that the listening detective exists, and they don't know that I can change the way I'm listening. So that if they need more of a therapeutic listener, I can do that. I'm trained to do that. If they need to have, coaching, I can do that. If they need more mentoring, then that's also, I can listen with the purpose of giving examples and models and suggestions. And I can change and work with them to work out what kind of listening they need in order to be motivated to change the situation or the environment or the conditions. But right now, I know that there's tens of thousands of people out there in tears who've tried everything they can, and they don't even know that I exist. So that my purpose for doing what I do is because I think about and I focus on those people. However, what I talk to people about it is then it's a process, isn't it? And what I also know, because I've been doing this a long time, is that some people can watch my social media for 3-4 years, because sometimes it takes that pattern of frustration to happen over and over and over again. And they can hear me and it can be sort of in their subconscious mind. But sometimes it'll take them 3 or 4 years before they'll contact me, and people will get hold of me and go, oh, I saw a video of yours 5 years ago, or I saw a post of yours, last year, and I've been mulling it over ever since. And now I've just got to that point where I've got to do something about it. So I know the process, and that's principle number 2, the motivated action, is that it's going to take people time. But for me, for my personal motivation, often when I'm doing something, if I'm not getting some kind of feedback that what I'm doing is working, I can get deflated. I can feel like I'm rocking up on these videos talking to myself. So right now, I know that sometimes there's a bit of a glitch with LinkedIn. But the lovely person who I can't say your name properly, but I'm going to say Shah-Rah, maybe, because I don't know how to phonetically make the K and the H sound. On my screen, it says to me that I have no viewers. But I also know that sometimes StreamYard says I've got no viewers, but actually there are viewers that are on LinkedIn, and there are viewers maybe on YouTube or Facebook, but it's not showing me it. So I can often be doing these shows and feel like I'm just talking to myself. And so one of the things that I know for me personally is I need to remember why I'm doing it. So first of all, I did it because I want to help those people out there that are actually needing my help. And it was to get business. When I reflected on that why recently, what I've also realised, it's more about legacy. That actually I get joy out of doing it, and it doesn't matter what kind of feedback I get or how quickly people respond, or whether it converts to business like quickly, i.e. the progress of it doesn't matter. When I tune into that, there is going to be a time when I decide to retire. There's going to be a time when I'm not going to be here on the planet. And that actually the social media posts are the thing that's going to always be there. And that by putting this information out there, by sharing stories. So when I tune into my legacy, and I particularly if I think about my children, I think to myself, well, if I put these posts out and I share this information with people, and it's with that purpose of helping the person who's overwhelmed and frustrated and don't know how different kinds of listening can help them get clarity of what they want and the confidence to make it happen, then it'll always be there for people. And so my need and desire to get that feedback instantly, to instant gratification, reduces, and the joy of doing it comes back. And before I went and took my break, I was feeling like, which is quite common, that I was spending sometimes 90 minutes a day crafting posts. And what I've realised is that that takes up a lot of time. And it's okay to take time doing something when you know that it's paying off and it's working. So you have to remember why you're doing it, who you're doing it for. You have to know the process, and you have to have ways of measuring progress. And so for me, I've been able to bring in another level of progress is that when I interview people on this show, then I know I'm providing assets for them. And one of the things I know, whether I retire, I hope to the day I die, I'll be interviewing people and shining the light on people and sharing how great they are. Because when we listen to other people with an open heart, without judgment, without contempt, and without criticism, we get to understand how other people experience the world. And first of all, we can learn from them. But second, we can have more compassion and understanding for our differences and value those differences and stop criticizing ourselves and each other because of our own uniqueness. We can sort of go, oh my gosh, sometimes it's like, if that's how hard it is for you, that's like, it's amazing you push through and you still do it. Or if they find it easy, you go, oh, well, that's because how their brain works. Well, my brain doesn't work like that. So one of the things I've learned in reflecting on it and looking at why am I doing it, the other reason I do it now that I didn't do before, particularly with Facebook, is as I went on holiday, I was like, oh, I'm not going to put anything out. I'm going to have a complete break. And then my mother-in-law very kindly said, oh, don't forget to put your pictures of your holiday. I really love seeing them. And I've realised that sort of Facebook and social media, to some extent, is a bit like a postcard. And so one of the things I realised for me personally is that when I first started social media, I was very much someone who compartmentalised and put business in a business box, and I worked for these hours, and when I switched off, I was very much sort of in family mode. And actually, never the twain would meet. And what the challenges I've discovered I've been finding is that social media means that the lines between work and home are blurred. And because there's more people to interact and react to and to engage with, there's more ideas, more opinions, more suggestions. And I just want to put this forward for all of you to think about with social media is get really clear. Please share below, what's your purpose? Why do you do social media? Because go back to the decision you made, how you made that decision, and just check if anything's changed. I certainly used to have a story that said, I just do social media for business. If I wasn't in my business and I wasn't trying to get customers, then I wouldn't do it. And the reason I was getting stressed is because I was measuring all my success based by that reason. But I don't do reason that alone now. I do it for connection. I do it for legacy. There's lots of different reasons. So that's the purpose for me. I'd love to know your purpose. My process is, I've just sat here today, I've got a monthly planner with a template and I've got prompts. But what I also discovered wasn't working and why it was taking me 90 minutes to do pros is I was going back into an old pattern of behaviour where I was analysing what I was saying, worried about what people would think. And I was saying to my Alice Fewings, who's part of the LinkedIn Collective, who's my sort of mastermind and community group to support me with my social media. And I said, one of the challenges as the listening detective, my job is to stay neutral, to keep my opinions and suggestions to myself, but also who I am. I've only just learning to have an opinion because actually I quite often see both sides of the story. I can understand it from both sides. But when it comes to expressing my own thoughts and feelings, I often need someone to ask me questions to help me get clarity. And so I can often write a post. I have an idea and I write something and then loads of information comes out. And then I'm like trying to spend time. What's the expression that, is it? Oh, I forget his name now. Twain Dyer or whatever his name is. But he said it takes a long time to write a short email. So I have lots to say, but then I have to work out how to edit it down to sort of say what's the most salient points. And what I discovered is that I'd spending a lot of time listening, a lot of time trying to work out what to say to please the audience. And I wasn't spending enough time listening and reflecting listening to myself. So having taken that month off, what I've discovered today is I've just written a 3-month plan really, really easily. And I'm really sorry if you can hear those emails pinging in the background. I thought I'd shut those off, but I'll do that now so it doesn't happen again. Is that I hadn't given myself time to listen to myself. So when I came to write those posts and those things, my own story and my own stuff was still going around in my head. And so, of course, what was coming out was all a little bit stuff that I needed to hear for me, but I didn't need to go out to the audience. And so it was taking a long time to filter and edit what it is I wanted to say, because I lacked the clarity and the purpose for posting again. Not because I don't know what my business is or what I want to do with my business, but actually because I got busy and I wasn't having time just to reflect and listen to myself. So one of the things I want you to think about your social media, I'd like to know, what's your purpose for being online? What's your process? Do you have templates? Do you have questions or things that you ask yourself or you prompt? You know, what do you use to help guide your attention to focus on what you're going to say and when you're going to say it? How do you measure progress? How do you know if your social media is working? And the last thing is just to notice your patterns. Well, not the last, the next thing is patterns. So for me, I know that what was happening just before April was I felt like I was back in a sort of a space before where, you know, when I don't know if you've ever been this kind of person, but this is who I used to be, where I would be reliving a conversation I've already had, and then I'd be practicing the conversation I was going to have, which meant I was never really in the moment with the people that I wanted to be with. And what I was finding with social media, because I had a lot going on and I hadn't had time to reflect, I hadn't had time to listen to myself, or as much time as I would normally do, or as much time as I needed, what was happening was that when it came to actually communicating, it meant that every conversation I was having with my family, I was trying to look for ideas for my social media posts. And so I was, rather than being present in the moment, I was observing myself and analysing myself. And that took me back like 10 years to when I was really critical of who I was and putting myself down and wasn't able to manage my critic at all. And it triggered, because the brain is really, it holds on to that information. And of course, if something happens now, it brings those feelings as though like it was right now. And so some of the stress and anxiety I was feeling was because my brain was thinking I was back into this sort of super analysing, overthinking, worrying about what everybody else thought. And of course, it was making the task itself really difficult. So one of the things I know that works for me, and I'd ask you to think about what works for you, is having set time to reflect. For me personally, and you know, whether it's about my family, for my own goals, for my business, so that I've got time to get my own head clear. So that when I come to listening to other people or communicating with other people, I have got clarity of what I want. I'm noticing how I'm feeling. I'm paying attention to what's going on in my own system, rather than pushing through, doing the work for the clients, pushing through and doing the social media, pushing through and doing stuff I've got to do at home. All the time I'm doing that, I'm usually pushing aside what I'm thinking and feeling, which means when I came to write the post, everything I was thinking and feeling was coming out, which is why it was taking so long to write the blooming thing. So know your own patterns. So what I know works for me to be at my best, is to have those breaks. But what I've come away with is realizing that I need to build some more reflection time in and not wait. Like, don't work 12 weeks and then take that light month and let everything come out in that time. I need to build more reflection time in during the day and during the week anyway. Because when I take more time to reflect and I take time to listen to myself, then I'm more likely to produce, when I do communicate, I'll do it with clarity and confidence. So that's talking about patterns. And the other principles we talk about in the Make It Happen 7-Day Make It Motivator is we talk about your party of people that are supporting you. So one of the reasons why it can be really challenging to do social media is because the big boys or girls, the owners of these platforms, are there to make money. That's their purpose. They may also have visions, they say, about community and bringing people together, but ultimately it's a financial entity and it has to be profitable. And so they have algorithms. And so what can happen is we get used to the pattern and we find something that works and we get into our comfort zone because it becomes familiar. And then, of course, the algorithm changes and then we have to update the way that we change. And one of the things that really impacted me was when I quite like doing posts Monday to Friday, but when they started saying, oh, well, LinkedIn's are now favouring posts on the weekend, I was feeling obliged to do posts at the weekend. But actually, I don't want to work at the weekend. That's not, I just sometimes do some training at the weekend that I go on. Sometimes I have events over the weekend, but not very often, because I do like to switch off from work and I do like to take my time out at the weekend. And so it's important to have the right party of people around you to support you, and for you to balance between what works for you and what works for the algorithms. And so what I did as a bit of an experiment this time in April, I stopped posting. I stopped taking all that time to think about what I was going to say. I spent more time listening to people and responding to other people's posts. And I had some gorgeous, gorgeous conversations behind the scenes, and actually built deeper and better connections with people. Arranged for people to come on the Make It Happen show to talk to me about what they do to push themselves out, what they do to make things happen. And it's been really, really effective. And so the big lesson that I've got from this is, when we go to other people, our party of people for support are the experts, the gurus that we're asking for. Yes, they're going to tell us how to work with and get the most out of the algorithms, but you mustn't lose sight of your own personal patterns and what works for you. I am the listening detective, and what I really want to be able to demonstrate most of all is my ability to listen. Not just my ability to talk about listening, but actually the most effective way for people to understand what I do is to experience the listening. So think about yourself. Who's supporting you? I know when I very first started, I've had people on my team who are checking the posts that I put out, and they're giving me feedback. Did I put a title in there? Did I do a call to action? Did I put a picture? Was this relevant? And I work out what my process is, what my framework is, but I have other people who are supporting me to work out, did I tick all the boxes based on my own standards, by my own requirements, rather than measuring all my progress by whether LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube have decided that I need to be pushed out as a viral quote or a viral post or whatever. Because when you're in that learning process, when you first start, you first got to learn how to manage yourself, then you've got to manage your time, then you've got to get the thoughts out of your head, then you've got to get them in a post, then you've got to learn how to structure the post, then you've got to learn, you might post them to start with when it suits you, then you might have to adjust it to actually post it when your audience is more available, and that's where I'm at right now. I prefer to post first thing in the morning, but what I don't know yet, and how I've ignored evaluating, is when are my audience around. And so that's the bit I'm going to have to work through. So it's being aware when you get advice from experts, and they often forget all that bit of the process, that there was a series of things to learn. And so it's important that you find out what works for you and what works for them. But I recognise it's going to be a process. And so actually managing your own time isn't something they're going to teach you. They're just going to tell you what to do on the platforms, but you have to manage yourself and your time first. And you might not know how you get the ideas from your head. You might not know what works for you to stimulate ideas, or how to collect them, or how to remember them. That's my challenge. I often don't know how to keep hold of them so that I can write about something in a couple of weeks' time or a couple of months. I kind of want to do everything as soon as I'm experiencing it in the moment, and learning how to hold on to it has been really, really important. So thinking about yourself, thinking about the people you're asking for advice from, or you're being guided by, or what you're watching and observing, be aware that they often won't they're not telling you how to set yourself up for success before you do the learning. They're not going to teach you how to learn new things. And that's part of you knowing your own patterns. It's about you having your own support network in place so that you can work out how you're going to apply the learning. And remember, they often learn it over time. So we often judge ourselves because it's not quick enough. So remembering things take time often. And it's about measuring and getting that statistics over time. The last thing, one of the last two principles is pause and then push. So the pause part is that I really do think that even though they're saying, you've got to keep showing up and you've got to be consistent, that's in order for you to work with the algorithms. But it's important that you know how to pause, that you know how to rest, restore, recharge. And for some people, going on social media is really restorative, that reading about other people's posts inspires them. It makes them feel good. It brings them joy. But other times you could read social media and it gives you yet another thing to think about, another thing you could be doing, another suggestion, a problem you hadn't even thought about before. And so actually going on social media can add to overwhelm and frustration rather than ease it. And if you are somebody who is driven by wanting to please other people, when you put a post out and someone doesn't like it or doesn't comment on it or it doesn't get shared, sometimes that can impact your sense of worth, your self-esteem, your confidence. It can often mean that you lose clarity because you wonder if what you're doing is the right thing, which is kind of where I was at, at March. I was sort of questioning why am I doing this? Which is why I hit the pause button. Now, it wasn't necessary from a sort of, I'm really stressed, I've got to stop. It was, I know my rhythm. I know that I can do sort of about 12 weeks and then I need to take a nice big chunk of time out. So I took the break and I gave myself time to reflect. And I've now reconnected with what works, why it works, why I'm doing it. I've got much more clarity now again about how I'm going to measure progress. And there are times when we've got to push ourselves outside our comfort zone. So for some people, social media, the thought of showing up on a camera, fills them with dread. It's outside your comfort zone. And it's remembering on social media that you can tune into and do what works best for you. So what I learn, I'm quite happy. This is a learnt skill to sit here in front of the camera. But it does require me getting up early, getting the lighting sorted out, getting my makeup on. And actually, I really loved in April only responding by typing so that I was actually invisible. In fact, the book that I read, in fact, I have it here. I might just get it out for you just to sort of show the point. The book I read over the holidays, which was interesting. Oh, dear, making a right crown racket. The Invisible Girl was one book I read over the holidays, my sort of fiction reading, and the year that changed everything. And I really enjoyed in April being a bit invisible, not having to put the makeup on, not having to work out and create Canva posts, just sharing other people's stuff. So I was still there, I was still commenting. And then when I went on holiday, I kind of stopped doing that as well. Gave myself permission to be in that space on my own. But for me, the push over the next quarter, I became aware when I was talking to Alice, was that I'm not necessarily going back over the data and checking which posts worked, why they worked. And I realised that there was this little voice inside me said, yeah, but I don't want to be told I've got to do it at 2:00 every day, because actually I prefer to do it first thing in the morning. And I don't want to be told I've got to do it at 8:00. So if it takes me 90 minutes to produce a post, I'm going to have to get up at like 5:00 every day. And so what I caught myself realising is I wasn't checking the data, I wasn't looking at the feedback, and I wasn't analysing it for patterns, because I didn't want to hear that what I'm doing right now doesn't work and that I have to do it at a different time. So I'm going to push myself out of my comfort zone over the next 3 months, and I'll be happy to tell you at the end of the 12 weeks how I've got on. But without any further ado, we're coming up towards the end of the half an hour of today's show. I have, by the statistics at here, I've got a 0, and I've kind of been talking to myself. I've got a little critic in the back of my head that's like really annoyed that I couldn't say the name properly of the one person that was on live with me earlier on today. And I'm used to that. That's the process. I've been through doing this a long time. And what I trust is that it was my first one back after a month. Everything will be just the way it needs to be. I'm very excited about next week's show. I've got Doris Leopold coming on, and we're going to be talking about sleep. One of the things that can happen is when we're making it happen and we're pushing ourselves out of our comfort zone, and we're perhaps a little bit more stressed than we really want or need to be, it can impact our sleep. So I'm really looking forward to talking to Doris and finding out what works for her, what doesn't, and what would work better when she's outside her comfort zone. What are her strategies to make sure she still sleeps well? And I'll be sharing some of mine as well. And then over the coming weeks, we've got people who have lost weight, who've grown businesses and are scaled up to franchises. We've got people who deal with Wealth Wednesday podcast host Dave Drimmy is coming on the show. Rob Palmer's hoping to come on as well. He's been really got a great story about how he pushed himself and the kind of pushing that didn't work and the kind of pushing that does work. And he's got some great affirmation information to share with you. So I'm really, really excited about the next 6 weeks that I've got lined up so far and that continue to line up. But if you've got a story, if you're making something happen and you're happy to come on live with me at 9 o'clock on a Monday, and you'd like to share what works for you about pushing yourself outside your comfort zone and making it happen, but also share with me and the audience the times when it hasn't worked, because that's the key. Yes, growth comes. I truly believe that growth does come from stretching ourselves outside our comfort zone. But if we push ourselves out of our comfort zone constantly, we stress our system to the point that it affects our health, our relationships, and then it will affect our wealth and happiness. And so it's important that we understand what kind of pushing works, what kind of pushing doesn't, and how do we tell the difference, and what are the warning signs much sooner than waiting for crisis to happen, where we're absolutely overwhelmed and we're totally frustrated and we're taking it out on ourselves or other people unnecessarily, when actually if we knew our own patterns and we knew our own process sooner, we could alleviate those problems too. So if you've got a story, if you've got something that you're making happen that you'd like to talk to people about, or you've got strategies and you're happy to talk about what works for you to sort of push yourself outside your comfort zone and what doesn't, then the theme for the next 6 weeks is all about pushing, and I'd really love to hear your stories. So without any further ado, let's call it a day, and I'll see you again next Monday. Take care. Bye. She says, and I've obviously forgotten how to do the videos at the end, so bear with me.